Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Juan, and welcome to. Ooh, that looks weird. Welcome to this week's live stream. I'm not saying Marketers Pensieve because, as you may have noticed, I've changed a little bit the branding of the live stream. It's no longer Marketers Pensieve, it's more Juan's Pensieve, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. Let me move this a little bit. Can't believe I hadn't noticed before. So typically, every live stream I spend at least an hour before the live stream just making sure that everything works. And of course, there's always going to be small details like that banner that I just adjusted, but nobody noticed, which is great. Good morning, Andres. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. Weekly recurrent viewer. Thank you so much for being here. Nice change. Thank you. Appreciate it. Now that you mention it, I think it's just appropriate to just dive into it and just talk about some of the announcements that I shared on social media. And I'll just summarize it because there's already a really long video on Instagram about it. It's like 11 minutes, and that's after editing it. But basically, so a few announcements, 4 of them to be precise. The first one, I'm increasing the scope of the live stream to include more topics. So it's not just going to be marketing, product management, and growth. It'll also have more startup related topics that will most likely still fall within marketing, product, and growth, but that allows us to have not only a wider audience and bring more value to the stream with more people being engaged on it and engaging on the with the content and being part of the Discord community. But it'll also allow us to see different perspective for multiple problems that we might face when working in marketing, product, and growth. That being said, that's the first announcement, so I'll be increasing the scope, and in order to fit the content of that extended scope into the live streams, I've added two more formats to the live stream, one of them being startup stand-up, meaning we'll have at least once or twice a month, so every other week on the live stream, a startup that will be interviewing sort of on live stream. They will have a representative that or two or more that will be pitching their startup, talking about what problem they're solving with their startup, and they'll tell us a little bit more about the problems that they're facing. So it's sort of like a startup therapy. I don't want to, abuse the word therapy in the wrong context, but I think it's more about helping startups have a space where to share their struggles right now in terms of marketing, product, and growth, so that myself and the rest of the audience can participate and help them brainstorm solutions, provide experience where applicable, and help them solve issues. Sometimes what I've seen in the past is that just the fact that they get a space to talk about it outside their organization and outside our board of directors or whatnot, it helps them have a different perspective on their current struggle. So that's a win for them, and for us, we get to learn a lot more and have a lot more valuable content. The second format that I'll be introducing is the fireside chats. So similar to the startup stand-ups, the fireside chat will bring people, industry experts, industry pros, subject matter experts, people that have worked in certain areas within startup marketing, product, and growth for the past few years, or that are quite successful at it or have very cool experiences about failing on it. And the idea is to have a point of view from someone who has most likely surpassed some of the problems that we as an audience are facing within our roles in marketing, product, and growth, or within startups in general, or career-wise. So that fireside chat will be less focused on a particular company, but more about their experience and how we can learn from them in our own professions or even on the personal side. And we will continue to have this format, which is more about the having a topic and Q&A, and that way we can have like a rhythm of changing every week a little bit the format, switching, and have more people involved, getting a wider audience, getting a wider range of topics, and overall just adding more value. So that's the main reason why I decided to add this format. Also because of the conversations that we've been having the past couple of streams, they're very related to particular scenarios within startups, companies, and I think that putting a more practical approach, or seeing how some of the things that we've been talking can be applied in reality to particular projects, startups, or companies in general, it'll add this extra layer of I would say learning from whatever we discuss every week. That being said, because we will have this format and these new other two topics, these new two formats, one thing that I wanted to share with the Pensieve community on Discord and on social media will be a content calendar, so that you know up ahead how to, what to expect on every live stream. Right now, I've been a little bit reactive, a little bit slow, a little bit too at the last mile posting what we're going to be discussing, and some people even forget that the live streams exist. I mean, we've only had 2 live streams so far. I'm very happy about them, but I would love for people to not forget about it. And I think that having clear expectations on what to expect, when to expect it, they'll be able to prepare themselves more, bring more questions, think about how they can interact and engage on the live streams. And I think that will bring a lot of value. And of course, this content calendar will be subject to feedback. Everything that you guys think would be more valuable, then we can readjust. The idea of this calendar is that it's a community focused calendar that will address the subjects that we're most interested about. That being said, having an extended scope, having more formats, having content calendar, I realized that the branding of the live stream will need to shift. That's why I've decided to shift from Marketer's Pensieve to Juan's Pensieve. I think the more personal touch on the live stream will be able to, will allow me to reach more people using my name and my experience and my even if it's small, but my clout, in order to reach people to bring to the live streams, particularly on Twitter, for example, where I've been able to engage in very interesting conversations so far. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll notice that I've been participating in a lot of threads related to marketing, SEO, growth, product, and I noticed that everyone on these threads and on Twitter in general, they call each other by their names, and I think that's very powerful when you can relate to an expert. You can call by their name someone who knows what they're talking about. So I think mixing that live stream brand with a Pensieve element and then my name, I think it'll be a good mix to start connecting with more people that could potentially bring more value to the live stream and to you guys. So I think that's good way forward. I'm not sure it's the perfect, but then again, as something that we'll be discussing today, experimentation is crucial, and I think we're at a stage that is super early on the live stream's lifetime. Therefore, it's the perfect time to start experimenting a little bit. Now, that being said, I think it's good time to start talking about today's topic, which is conversion rate optimization. Thank you, Beltran. Thank you so much for being here. We have 2 Andreses so far and in the live stream. Now, conversion rate optimization. This is one of those areas that people, particularly within marketing, not necessarily product and growth in general, but particularly marketing, use as a buzzword. They like to call every sort of initiative a conversion rate optimization, but few of them actually know how to implement it, how to test it, how to measure initiatives within conversion rate optimization. So hopefully I bring more clarity into what it really is and how to implement it at different stages within a flywheel, funnel, whatever you want to call it, user journey, and how to use it to your advantage. So I'm gonna share my screen really quickly so that I can give a very super complicated concept of what conversion rate optimization is. And this is by Optimizely, one of the most amazing tools for conversion rate optimization, and I'll get to that at the end, like tools that I would recommend for this practice. But conversion rate optimization is defined as the process of increasing the percentage of conversions from a website or a mobile app. Now, this particular concept is very much focused on conversion rate optimization from the perspective of Optimizely, which is a tool that particularly helps with CRO experiments on website and mobile. However, you'll notice that conversion rate optimization can be applied to multiple different stages of the user journey, funnel, whatever you want to call it, and throughout different channels of acquisition and engagement with your users. So typically, conversion rate optimizations focuses on testing. So whether it's A/B testing or multivariate testing. A/B testing is just having two same placements or two same surfaces that will be touched by a user with one key difference. And that's why one is the original, one is the one with that different element that might be copy, design, a button, or a different concept, different model. But typically you would want to change one variable within that from the variant compared to the original version. So if we talk about websites or a landing page, for example, which is a very common place to implement tests to see what converts the most, then you would have the original landing page, and then you would have the B or the variant landing page that is an exact copy of the original version, but with one element change, and that's the element that you'll be testing engagement on during this A/B testing. Now, multivariate testing is a little bit more complicated because, as the name says it, it's multivariate, multiple variants as well as multiple variables within the variance. So it gets a little bit more complicated because it, in essence, requires a tighter measurement system to ensure that the test is running correctly. And by testing correctly, I mean that the results that you'll obtain from it will be easily comparable between all the variants, and you'll be able to take a decision on it. Now, let's just stick with A/B testing for the sake of today's conversation regarding conversion rate optimization. So A/B testing can be implemented throughout all the stages of a user journey. So from brand awareness, you can A/B test multiple different, let's say, ads, whether that's physical ads, so offline ads that you see on bus stops, whether that is billboards, whether it's online with uh, movie trailers, ads for video ads for your campaigns, for your company, whether that's Facebook ads, YouTube ads, search ads. So that just in the awareness and sort of first engagement with the user type of stage, there are a lot of A/B testing opportunities. Let's say you build a campaign on Facebook ads, right? And it's the first time that you're creating an ad and you're not entirely sure what will work or not. So what you can do is build multiple hypotheses of what could be working. So for example, the first hypothesis would be having a video will most likely attract users to click, watch, consume, and click to my landing page, right? That's a very vague hypothesis, but for the sake of the example, then you would have a video ad. But then if you want to test because you don't really know whether that's going to work or not, then one thing that you can do with the same campaign is duplicate it and create a B version where the variant and the variable that you'll be experimenting on could be the copy of the video, right? So while the video, the asset itself is the same, the caption or the description of the video might be different. So you'll be testing those variables within the same asset. And that's one type of A/B testing, just copy testing for the same asset on Facebook ads. The same happens with Google search ads. So you have people looking for, let's say, CRO tools, and you're not entirely sure what would work best to attract users. You might have an ad that has the first headline as the best CRO tool, and then the second ad, a second ad that has best CRO tool 2022. The rest of the ad is exactly the same description, the same link, the same headline 2 and headline 3, but then that first headline is what you're gonna be testing. So again, what I want to get to is the fact that even at an early stage of the user journeys, you can experiment and do some sort of conversion rate optimization, where the objective is understanding which initiatives drive more conversion than others and being able to test them against each other. Now, a few caveats here. The first one is that not all experiments are created equal. And when I say that is that you might have an experiment that has variant B showing more success than variant A on a page that typically has 1 million users per day, and you run it for 4 days, and then you have like a clear winner throughout those 4 days. However, if that's a 1 million page, 1 million users per day page within a domain that has 100 million users visiting per day, then your sample size might be too small. And that's when we get a little bit more statistical about the approach on how to calculate conversion rates. So if you're doing tests at a small scale, then it might not be as relevant, because at the end of the day, what you want to get is results quick, and what's driving quicker results. But when you're playing around with tests at a large scale, then you want to make sure that if you roll out that change that you tested on that small page compared to the rest of the site, and you want to roll it out to the rest of the 1,000 pages that also drive a million pages per million users per day, and you want to make sure that whatever you tested on that first page is statistically relevant, meaning it'll most likely cause the same effect throughout all the other pages. And I could get a little bit more technical about it. I noticed that there's an issue on Twitch. Give me 1 second. If you're having an issue on Twitch, you're most likely not watching me. Give me 1 second. I think it's both YouTube and Twitch. Yeah, so last week we also had an issue with internet, and I said, I wonder what next week's issue will be. All right, let's see. Beltran says he can see me, and that's on Twitch. Oh, wow. All right. Just bear with me, because the computer that I'm using to see myself on YouTube and Twitch just completely froze. And it says there's no internet, so I'm not sure whether you can see me and hear me, or whether it's just the computer being a pain. Sorry about that. Let me check on my phone real quick. All right, so I can see myself on Twitch. I'm just gonna go check YouTube very quickly. So I think it's not on. Right, it seems to be working now. I can see myself on YouTube and Twitch, and it seems to be loading on the other computer. So again, sorry, and thank you for bearing with me. Now, where was I? So okay, let's take a step back. Okay, it's good on Twitch. Thank you, Beltran. Thank you, Rai. Hopefully on YouTube it's working again. Okay, I just got someone from work tell me that they can see me on YouTube fine. So okay, thank you so much. Let's return to the subject then. So regarding CRO, what I was getting to is that basically at every stage of the user's journey, whether it's from their very first impression on an ad, or they're on a landing page, or they're already through the funnel and they're already a user, you want to be testing different touch points with the client or your users in order to retain them and increase their lifetime value over time, right? And that's something that we discussed last week, lifetime value. How can we, once we've acquired the user, how can we increase their lifetime value? You can increase their return rate. You can increase their average transaction value. You can reduce your customer acquisition costs. And throughout all these variables that went into the lifetime value, you can also implement conversion rate optimization tests. Now, let me give you an example of acquisition. So acquisition, let's define it as the sign up. Let's say you have a software that you have a freemium model, right? So freemium meaning it starts free, but if you want to get all the cool perks and all the really cool benefits from the tool, then you have to pay or upgrade your account from a free version to a paid tier version of the software. So you can count as an acquisition the sign up and the usage of the free tool, but then you also want them to upgrade their plan to a paid plan, right? Now, you can implement tests on landing pages and your different touch points in order to increase the sign up, the initial sign up. And you can do that by, for example, A/B tests on landing pages. But then you can also, after they've signed up as a free user, how can you create tests to increase their upgrade rate at the rate at which free users turn into paid users? And that it really depends on every company and every organization. Uh, for example, there might be subscription or some of these subscription-based platforms where you consume content and you can A/B test the payment options. So that's why you frequently see on these um, subscription-based apps that you can pay monthly as you go, so that there's a smaller friction between the free version and the paid version because the price is lower. But then you can also have a yearly version of that paid or that upgrade, and you can have a lower yearly rate than if you added all 12 months. And that's something that a lot of companies have already tested and they have seen it work. But then how do you, because you want to increase the lifetime value, you would much rather have people pay up ahead of time the yearly version than have them month to month and then spend on retention costs, meaning you already have this user which is paying a monthly fee, but then now we have to continue investing into retaining them to the next month. So month to month subscriptions typically have a drop off rate higher than or more recurrent than yearly subscriptions, because yearly subscriptions you have 12 months to convince the user of your value prop and of them using and of you learning from them, that you'll most likely be able to retain them for another year if you do things right, of course, by them. And by them, I mean, providing the right amount of value. Now, if you are on a monthly basis, then you want to turn them into yearly basis or make sure that they continue to pay that monthly subscription. I'll give an example of a retention strategy. And it's a very weird strategy, but it worked. So a few years ago, I was working at TripAdvisor, and they wanted to increase return rate. And by increasing return rate, they would increase the lifetime value of the users they had already acquired in the past. And by making them return with an average transaction value for those returns, they would know whether the experiment was worth it or not. So that experiment consisted in 4 users in the US between a specific age bracket that were, most likely more affluent in terms of money power. Let's just call it that. They wanted to for this particular segment, they want them to return, instead of 4 times a year, they wanted them to return 5 times a year. They wanted them to book a trip, book a hotel, book an attraction, or book a flight on TripAdvisor as a whole, with an initiative. They knew that from the average return transaction, they have a particular monetary value. Let's call it $400, for example. So they knew that if they wanted to make those $400, they needed to invest a portion of that potential revenue into bringing them back. They noticed that this particular segment had a lot of affiliation or felt very related to the TripAdvisor brand. So they said, okay, what if, and this is that was a very big what if in my opinion. What if we provided this segment with a free luggage tag, literally just a piece of plastic that they could put on their luggage, like on the handle of the luggage. You see sometimes like people put some all sort of weird stuff there, but on their luggage handles you can tie either a rope or a tag or whatever. So they wanted to incentivize this segment of users with a free luggage tag that had a huge TripAdvisor logo, like the little owl. Um, and their hypothesis is that by incentivizing them with a luggage tag, something that inspired traveling and something that they could feel proud of because they felt related to this brand, they would incentivize these users to return to book an additional time throughout that year with TripAdvisor. Now, for me, that sounded crazy, but the company at the time had a lot of money and they were willing to take those risks because when you get to that point of being a company that just in my building we were 1,500 people, sixth floor, brand new building, you start running out of options to test. So this was within the brand department, and a small parenthesis there, it shows that you can still have conversion related efforts and CRO opportunities planned and executed, tested, measured by teams that are not necessarily within a testing team or a product or engineering team. This was from the brand marketing team. So, okay, we had a segment of, I believe, was around 50,000 people that fit this age group within the US. And we said, we need to get 50,000 luggage tags potentially. But if we expect not all 50,000 to actually convert, then we'll probably end up requiring less. Say, instead of all 50,000, we can purchase 2,000. And I'm just throwing out numbers because this was in 2016, so I can't really remember, but it was that sort of volume. So you wouldn't expect all 100% of the users to really receive the luggage tags, and that's because it required an action from the user. I'll get to that idea in a little bit, Andres. So you asked, how do they come up with that idea? And I'll get to that in a little bit because that's one of the questions that I asked throughout that experiment. So they had this number of users. They wanted to send them tags. They sent them emails that if they wanted the tag, they could request it through a form, and they could request it by adding their address in the US, their name, last name, email, phone, all that data. They dated that they didn't necessarily already have on the TripAdvisor database because not all the time you would require them where they live, their address, right? Their mailing address. So here's what happened. We bought thousands of luggage tags. We emailed thousands of users within a control group of 50,000 from a particular segment, an age group, and all that. A portion of them actually requested them, and at the end of the day, what was the result? So each luggage tag was about $2 brought from China, put at door in the US. Like a bunch of logistical things went on there, but the result was that we saw an increase between this 50,000 people test group versus a similar test the control group that did not have the luggage tag incentive. And the group that was given the luggage tag, not even everyone received the luggage tag, not everyone requested it, but because of most of them requesting them, we saw a 10% increase on that experiment group, a 10% increase in return rate from that variant group, from that group that did request and receive the luggage tag versus a control group. That 10% chance of return rate meant thousands, if not millions of dollars in new revenue by just investing a small portion of that revenue or potential revenue at the time in luggage tags. So how the heck did they figure that it would be great to send people luggage tag in order to incentivize return rate? And that goes to Andres's question: how did they come up with that idea? So again, this was a company that just in brand marketing there were hundreds of people. I would say probably 150 people just working in brand marketing or brand marketing related initiatives. This was brought on by people who had worked at other companies, and they had experimented with merchandise as an incentive, recognition of their user pools and whatnot. So one thing that is very important when you are creating tests is see what other people are doing and see how you can apply it. So if your company is not a travel company that could potentially offer luggage tags, then what can you actually offer your users that might incentivize their return rate? So what's valuable to them? So if you have a software as a service and you have a few perks that are premium and not for the paid users, or no, sorry, that it's paid and not for the free users, then what's most valuable to them for you to get them a glimpse of? For example, hey, we're opening for free users this beta test for 15 days of this particular feature that we think you might be interested in. Okay, I'm interested. I sign up for it. I get access for 15 days. I'm most likely seeing more value of my membership, and I might be incentivized to have a paid account so that I can continuously use that feature. And that's a conversion action, not necessarily a retention action, right? But if you do have users who have paid in the past and are no longer paying, for example, churned users, how can you reactivate them? You can also implement the same. So at the end of the day, you're not necessarily spending in ads, but you are receiving less money for a paid feature. So if you have costs associated with allowing your users to use this feature, then you are investing in it. You are investing in reactivation, but then the potential of them actually subscribing again is typically much higher than your costs of bringing them back on board, or at least that's the hypothesis that you should be building up on. Now, if you see that your test is becoming too expensive and you're not seeing the results, then you gotta prioritize. Do I want to see this experiment go through? Do I want to see whether it is statistically significant or not, the temporary results that I'm seeing, or and am I willing to continue put cash on it, or should I call it a day and start testing it other things? Like, that really depends on where you are right now, how much you're willing to spend in that particular initiative. Because so if you put it in perspective, say your customer acquisition cost is super high, but then users are only staying for 2 months and then churning, and you see that this particular feature is what they're using the most, then you might try and incentivize, how can I make this more accessible so that they can use this feature and return and increase, and I get to increase their lifetime value. So it's a little bit of a spaghetti. There are a lot of things involved, but the direct answer to how do they come up with this idea is seeing what's out there, what has worked elsewhere. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have issues growing or testing because they think they need to they need to invent or create everything from scratch just because their solution is so unique. But in reality, there are probably thousands of companies that are doing exactly the same of what you're doing and have already tested, and that's the reason why, for example, they have the login button right here at the top right. and then you see those patterns. And that's something that's a good segue to something that I wanted to talk about as well, which is pattern finding and what it's about and how it impacts conversion rate optimization tests. So say you just raised a seed fund and you have some resources to start experimenting in more ads and SEO, and you're bringing in more traffic, but you wanted to see which alternatives could bring you more conversion from that increased traffic, so that your investment or your return on advertising spend, your ROAS, is increased, right? But then you have a software as a service and you're doing the same thing as you were doing before the seed investment round, and you're not necessarily sure where to go from there, right? Go look 5 to 10 companies that do things similarly, so that have the same business model but not necessarily in your industry. Go to 5 direct competitors, players that do exactly the same, like they're in the same niche as you and you're competing directly with. And then also see other companies that are not necessarily super related to what you do, but that are very successful in conversion or retention or whatnot. Visually, like at least it helps me to put this visually, like either in Whimsical or Figma or whatever. If it's a conversion element that you're trying to test on a particular landing page, put in perspective and compare them all of these competitors into the same page. So screenshot their landing pages, screenshot all their user journeys, and see what common things you can find between them, particularly between the ones that are already successful that might not be even directly related to you or your business. But for example, if you're a software as a service and you have monthly recurrent subscription and whatnot, then you might look for other companies that have subscription-based model and that are not necessarily serving the same niche as you. And then you create this visualization of their user journeys, of their landing pages, of their call to actions, of their retention strategies, and you'll definitely see commonalities between them, at least between the most successfuls. And you might also see that your direct competitors are also starting to do these things that those big players are doing. Again, a lot of entrepreneurs think that they have to create their own way of building things, that their way is the coolest way, and they might go down a rabbit hole building this parallax and super dynamic and animated websites that are super cool and might be amazing in terms of graphic design, but they might be trash in terms of conversion. And then you have their competitor, which might be an even smaller team with less funding, but they're growing at a higher rate because they have a simpler page that works. So sometimes forgetting that you are the best thing ever will help you have a clearer perspective and a better visibility of what actually works out there that you can copy and replicate. Okay, so how do you prioritize among all the parts involved in improving CRO? So there are a lot of methodologies for prioritization. I use one that is called ICE prioritization, and it basically takes a bunch of ads, of course. Let's see. Basically, the ICE prioritization is that you have 3 variables that get you to compare in an apples to apples dimension all your different variables, right? So first thing you need to is identify them all and list them all. What are the opportunities? What are the things that you want to test in each either page or funnel stage? And then you prioritize them through this ICE model. So ICE stands for, and every letter of the ICE word stands for something different. ICE is impact, complexity, and effort. So by scoring from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, depending on how granular you want to go, impact and then complexity and then effort, then you'll be able to sort by what has the highest impact or what's easier to get done quicker. So it should give you something like, when you compare improving a particular landing page's call to action versus an onboarding process, and you want to know, I only have one engineer, how do I prioritize those? So if your hypothesis is that my onboarding is costing me 80% bounce rate versus my landing page that's only converting 3% of the traffic that I'm bringing, then you would translate those drop-offs and their impact in revenue. So how much is each of those impacting, right? And that's the impact aspect of it. How much are they potentially hurting or could benefit your bottom line metric, which could be revenue, for example. So if the impact of, when you do that analysis, if the impact of improving your landing page is a lot lower than fixing your onboarding process, but it takes less effort and it's less complicated because you only need to have an engineer work on it 2 hours and change a couple of things and add things that you saw from your competitors' patterns to that page, then even though its impact might be lower, then its complexity and level of effort is lower and you might get to results quicker, versus the onboarding, which might take the engineer a whole week or two, and it'll take you 2 weeks to see some sort of differences in your effort. Particularly if you're gonna start using A/B tests and you use tools to analyze whether the test is good or not, then you'll definitely take longer to implement this more broader and more complex projects. So by prioritizing or scoring the initiative's impact, complexity, and effort, level of effort, you'll be able to get to a score where you will be able to sort by that score, and that's how you would work on it. Now, there are ways that you can change this this prioritization framework. You can add a potential, you can add impact in terms of revenue. You can change complexity in terms of number of stakeholders or steps that go through it. You can change, or you can variate what effort means by number of hours required. And when you translate numbers of hours required to engineering resources, you can also translate that to costs. So you could potentially have that by impact in terms of revenue, complexity in terms of days that it could take to get to the result, and then effort in terms of cost. So those are, the same 3 variables: impact, complexity, and effort, but put in a different perspective that could potentially help you take better decisions for your business. I hope that sort of gives an idea on how to prioritize amongst all the parts. Now, in order to identify what to work on first, how to create that list of things to work on, one thing that I would recommend is identifying the red flags. And the red flags would be, thanks, Juan. Okay, great. One thing that I use to identify these red flags is just looking at the funnel. So seeing I'm investing this much in ads and I'm bringing this much traffic, and then this much traffic is only this few users, and start breaking that down into conversion rates and volume. And because of that, I'll be able to identify, hey, I'm investing a lot of money in ads that are bringing me a lot of traffic and that are taking a lot of those users. So say from all the ads, I'm bringing 1,000 users. 80% of those 1,000 users, so 800 users, are actually initiating the onboarding process, but only 10 of them or 80 of them, 10% of them are actually finishing the onboarding process. The big red flag is the drop off from users on the landing page, or starting the onboarding process and finishing it. So my red flag is on the onboarding process. How can I test where in the onboarding process are users being lost? You can do the same with, after I've activated a bunch of users, they're not returning on the second month of using my software or my tool or my services. So I'm investing all this money in acquiring users, but at the end of the day, they're only leaving me revenue once, and I want to increase their lifetime value. Therefore, I want to increase their return rate. Therefore, I want to make them return month on month. My retention strategy must be worked on and optimized. And that's when you start looking at, what am I currently doing in terms of retention? What am I currently doing in terms of email, after sales services, customer service, operations? So basically, if you want to create a mindset for it, the first thing I would do is identify all your conversion points and all your touch points with the users. Identify those red flags by volume and conversion rates. Identify what you're currently doing on those points and conversion points, and then put all the red flags, write them in a list. Add a list of all those red flags that you've seen and which are potential fixes or testing opportunities. After you have that list of all your flags, prioritize them through a methodology such as the ICE prioritization. And I don't know why I still have this page open. This is clearly, yeah. Oh, another thing, you can also change what complexity means. It can also be confidence. So if you're working with an agency, for example, and they're suggesting a particular project, and they use confidence instead of complexity, which is likely the reason why you're hiring them, because they have experience on it. If they attribute high confidence in an initiative because they've done that with similar clients like you or similar businesses, therefore that's something to also take into consideration. That's also another point to that's for the agencies, so the people proposing the confidence, that's typically very subjective unless they have like a very well documented list of historical tests. Therefore, the confidence could be subjective, and whoever proposes that and attributes a particular confidence level to that effort will ultimately be the person or the group of people responsible for the success or not of the experiment. I'll just put that as a caveat, because there ultimately one element that is very crucial in larger teams with this prioritization list is that you have to have an owner of each of these experiments. You have to have an owner in terms of someone that will be accountable and will be able to measure and share results and prioritize properly. That way, when the product team or engineering team or whoever will be actually executing or implementing these tests will say, this has this score, and we're gonna go through all these scores because of the final result. But if they fail and something that was lower in the list actually caused a better result, then identify, was it the impact that was misassessed? Was it the confidence? Was it the level of effort that was not assessed properly? That way you'll be able to prioritize even better moving forward. So there are a lot of layers into conversion rate optimization and just experimentation in general. I think conversion rate optimization is an area where everyone in the company should be working on. So everyone from the people creating ads should be testing and prioritizing tests. Everyone in the acquisition sales team should be testing different methodologies, different follow-up templates or workflows, different proposal styles. Everyone in the customer success team, so after you've acquired a user, how can we keep them better? What sort of initiatives can we test? What sort of emails can we test? What sort of ticketing processes can we implement to solve users' issues quicker? Can we create a help center? What sort of things can we do to keep them satisfied? And then how can we help our users bring more users? And that's another type of conversion, which is referral rate. You can also improve that. You can also test that by, instead of giving you $50, I'll give you $25 and your referee $25, and that's a test you can also be running. So in general, conversion rate optimization is more about looking how to increase the efficiency of tests that you can propose to solve the red flags that you diagnose when trying to grow your company or project. That's, I think, my summary from what we talked about today. And I've talked a lot today, and thank you so much for the questions so far. Are there any other questions, either directly related to CRO or prioritization or what we talked? Do you have a particular case that you want to evaluate? It's something that I would love to do in a second version of this uh, conversion rate optimization topic, or on a different live stream, uh, which is a little bit more advanced, is understanding cognitive load and how to use that to your advantage. So when you have an onboarding process, so for example, you need to, a user searches for red pants near me, and they find a store, an online store that sells pants near them, or that can deliver, or that have a physical address near the user, and they go on the site, they see, okay, I can just buy them online or buy them to pick up. The intention from that user, the intent is to buy red pants. Their intention is not to create an account and become an influencer for that brand. Their intent is to buy red pants. So the less friction that you create into satisfying the user's intent, most likely you are to convert them into users, because at the end of the day, you're making it easier for them to satisfy their intent, their need, right? Their immediate need. A lot of companies, particularly in retail, they require you to create an account, and it interrupts the process of purchasing something. And you might go around, yeah, I actually need their data so that I can improve my acquisition strategies overall, and that I can actually retarget them in the future. So you could argue whether or not you should collect their information or not, but then when you collect their information, how can you make it subconsciously easier for them to finish that flow and finish their conversion path? So a few examples that I'll share is that if you have an onboarding process that has a form that requires your name, email, phone number, those are three fields that are very different and requires the user to have a shift of mind when completing that form. And it sounds ridiculous because it's a very small and we're very used to it because everyone does it, but you're shifting from a text field to an email field to a phone field. Those are three different types of inputs that you need to think about when creating this form for the user. If those are the only three fields that you need, then you might get away with it. However, if you break them into three separate windows, despite it being two more steps technically because you have two more windows, you might see that the user, because they're opening their mindset to the text field, moving along, they've closed that mindset, they've shifted, now they have the email input, now they have that mindset, so they'll fill it in, closing it, and then starting with another mindset for a different field and a different page. That actually helps the user in some cases, something that you can test. It might not happen with your clients, with your users, but in most cases, even if it splits them into multiple steps, you might see that the completion rate of that form is higher than if you have one page with all those 3 fields. And the reality is that you most likely not just you most likely you won't just have those 3 fields. Most likely you'll have address inputs or business detail inputs. So a bunch of fields that are on different formats, require different mindsets, different information from your user. And that mental friction from switching from one input type to another, switching from numbers to email to business to personal details, that is cognitive load. It's the same concept that some people, like for example Steve Jobs, use, that I want to take less decisions in my life, therefore I'm gonna dress the same way every day. That's just reducing cognitive load, meaning if your brain was a computer, uh, reducing the amount of usage of your RAM and processor. I think that's the right analogy. And engineers, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in essence, I just need to have less things top of mind when completing this. If I'm looking at just a really long form, the first thing I'm gonna say is like, I need to fill in all of this just to get red pants. No, this is gonna be annoying. I'm not gonna do that. But if you split it and you show that they're in step 3 of 5 and they see that each step is really short, that creates a sensation that I'm almost there, this is quick, I can get it done fast. So these are elements that help with conversion in a particular step of your user journey, but that taking into consideration cognitive load as a friction or conversion point in your user journey, that gives you a mindset of what should I be testing, how should I be testing it, and will it cause this impact or not on the user when going through this process. That's something that I would probably discuss further and show some more cases on a V2 of this topic. I think the purpose of today's topic was to give some light into what it is, how it's implemented. I didn't even get to tools, but if you do have questions about tools, please ask them around on Discord. I think Discord, and you should have, so you can find the link on social media. I'll share it after the stream. If you're not following social media, this is the Instagram, this is the Twitter. Won't more than one window bring a question of a user of how many windows will they have to fill? Yes, and that's a decision you want to make. So what can you do to ease the mind of the user that could potentially think that there are too many windows? Some companies use sliders or a countdown or a progress bar. So say you're 30% done, 50% done, 80% done, so that they know how much more they need to work on. And again, it really depends on what sort of information you're collecting. So if there's one screen that collects your mailing address and there's another section of the form that collects your billing address, one thing you can do is either put those on the same or adding a box that will autofill the billing or the mailing address if they're the same, right? So you're reducing the number of actions that they need to take despite it being more fields. By adding this progress bars or links or step 1 out of 5 sort of elements, you're allowing the user, so one thing that humans in general hate is uncertainty, right? By creating that clear expectation of how many steps there are in total, where I'm at right now, how much is left, then you're enabling them, you're putting their mind at ease that I don't know for how much longer this will take. That's one way to put it. One way to put it. When you are creating tests or forms such as quiz flows, for example, if ahead of time you tell them it typically takes 2 minutes or 30 seconds, then despite it being multiple windows, you know that you'll be able to finish it within 30 seconds. When you don't know how long it'll take users to fill in a process or an onboarding process, um, you can potentially use other sort of triggers to rush through it. For example, if the red pants are in offer and the offer is only going to last for 5 more minutes and 10 more people are currently buying those same red pants, you're creating a sense of urgency. Therefore, I don't care how many windows there are. I just want to get through this quick so that I get my red pants and nobody else gets them. Whether that's real or not, the sense of urgency can also help push users through a flow. And this is very particular to an e-commerce and other sort of in-demand type of products or services. So, and that's a good question. That's a really good question, Maria Paula. So, those are the sort of questions that you need to think about when implementing the tests for your CRO initiatives. Great question. Thank you for asking. And thank you for hopping on the live stream for the first time. Are there any more questions regarding either CRO, tests, prioritization? One thing I'll do throughout the week is share more content on social media about, for example, the tools, cases, links of interest for everyone that wants to get more into conversion rate optimization. I think one other thing that we didn't discuss today is how different teams can be involved in these initiatives. So you can have designers that create the assets for the tests. You can have engineers that place those tests on the right place on the site or the app or the asset that you were working on. You can have product teams work on the research behind that test and identifying those red flags. You can have data scientists analyzing the statistical significance of those tests, or you can have people that can implement those tests through tools such as Google Optimize, Optimizely, and more. So a lot of people can be working on it, a lot of people can contribute, and the idea of having a CRO mindset in the business will, throughout every team, is that anytime we see a red flag, we should plan on providing alternatives. And if we don't know what are the alternatives to fix those red flags, look at competitors, see what they're doing, look at indirect competitors, look at people with similar business models that might not be a competitor because of the industry or whatnot, see what they're doing, identify patterns, and create this prioritization list that will allow you to start testing. And that's the best way to iterate and work on fixing those red flags. Are there any more questions? We're just about time. It's been a little bit over the 1 hour mark. I don't want to cut it short, but I know that there might be some questions regarding tools, where to learn more about it, and I'll be sharing those on the Discord server. So if you want to join the Pensieve, the community of marketers, product managers, startup founders, and other professionals that are looking to learn, share, and engage with each other, look for the Discord link on social media. I'll be sharing the link on stories. And agree, testing is an essential part of business. There we go. All right. If there aren't any more questions, I'm gonna be cutting it now. I'm gonna be cutting the live stream now. And again, thank you everyone for being online. As usual, I always have the viewers count hidden, so I have no idea how many people actually watch the live stream. But in general, I just had a lot of fun, and with the people that asked questions and were engaging in the chat, thank you. It really adds value. All your questions to put everything that I talk about in practice and how you can implement what we discussed. So thank you everyone, and I'll see you next week. Don't forget to join the Discord server, and until next time, bye.